Could it be? But me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to continued coverage of the 2018 NFL Scouting Combine here on the Louie T Network. Of course, I'm your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me on the program. A lot to discuss on day 3 of the NFL Scouting Combine. 3 days down, 1 to go. All we have left are the defensive backs, which they will be hitting the field tomorrow. Corners and safeties will wrap up the 2018 NFL Scouting Combine. But in day number 3, we saw the defensive line, edge rushers, and linebackers hit the field. And so a lot to discuss with this group. A lot of injuries today. A lot of guys weren't able to complete the drills on the field. And so we'll talk about all of those guys that went down. And nothing serious. All of those guys that weren't able to finish were pretty much primarily due to hamstring pulls, which we saw a couple in day 2, not as many in day 1, plenty of them in day number 3. And we've seen some of the bigger names of this draft not be able to participate due to some hamstring pulls. So we'll talk about all of those things and then some. We'll talk about standouts from day number 3. We'll talk about some guys that maybe disappointed a little bit. And then we'll talk about some guys that could potentially be moving up draft boards because of what they did, or at least forcing people to go back and watch a little bit more of what they were able to put forth at the collegiate ranks after what they were able to do at the combine in day number 3. So let's start with group number 7, the defensive line. And I love how the NFL this year finally got smart and separated the big space eaters in the middle, the big defensive linemen, the guys that you expect to be either a 5 technique or a 3 technique or a nose tackle in this league, not the guys that we expect to be edge rushers going after the quarterback. Last year, we saw guys be, to me, displaced and put into incorrect groupings, and it made their times look so much better than the rest of their group, and it's kind of unfair. We saw it last year with Hassan Reddick. He was with the defensive lineman. He ran like a 4.53, but you put it next to all the rest of the guys that he was in the group with, and of course, he made everybody else's time look pedestrian. So I'm glad they separated them. They still had some guys in there where you're like, why is this guy with this group? He should have been with the defensive line group. Nonetheless, let's take a look at the defensive lineman who got the day started off in group number 7. John Atkins out of Georgia, a big physical space eater, not going to be a 3-down player, just a guy you're looking to help you stop the run. And he's an alternate to some of the other guys, the bigger names in the draft, like Vita Vea, who you know you're not going to get if you're at 25, if you're at 20. He's not going to be around. And so a guy like John Atkins offers you some value and an alternate option later on in the draft as a guy that can stop the run. Not going to get any pressure on the quarterback per se, but can help you stop the run. A guy that I think a lot of people are starting to take notice of is Taven Bryan. I know I got homework to do on him because before this weekend, I wasn't very versed in who Taven Bryan even was, let alone, again, this is a 1-year guy, okay, a 1-year starter. So it's not like he was out balling for the last 3 years and I was living under a rock, but still, I still got a lot of homework to do on Taven Bryan to see exactly where he fits. And he ran a sub 540, a 4.98, and at 291 pounds and being 6'5", that's a hell of a time for a guy that big. And then when they put on a couple of the cut-ups, and Mike Mayock went through his XO of Taven Bryan, can't lie to you, I was very impressed with what I saw. It looks like a guy that can not only stop the run, but more importantly, can get after the quarterback and affect the pass game. And so I'm intrigued by Taven Bryan. A lot of people are talking about him potentially being a 1st-round pick. And from what I saw, the little that I saw, I tend to agree. But again, I've got to do my own homework for me to be on board with that narrative of him potentially being a 1st-round pick. I thought he was exceptional, though, throughout the day. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 guys from the first group here at Group 7 in day 3 that I thought stood out. Taven Bryan was one of those guys. 5, let me add another name to that list. Rasheem Green out of USC. I knew he was going to come in and test well because a lot of people were disappointed that he didn't go back to school. They thought he came out too early. He needed his body to develop a little bit more, and he could have used the time at school to kind of define a position for him. I think he was out of place. He was one of the guys that was misplaced in these groupings. He should have been with the second group, and there were a couple of guys in the second group that should have been with the first group. And of all the guys that they put in this first group, I think he was one of the few that they misplaced. He should have been with the second group because he's a defensive end right now. And ultimately, his body may grow into being a defensive tackle. But right now, I think he's a defensive end. And he ran like one at 6'5", or basically 6'4", 275, 4'7", I thought his movement skills were very good all day long. And he's another guy that I like throughout the course of this day. And again, he's a guy that you got to figure out what you want to do with him. Are you going to kick him inside in passing situations and have him be a defensive end for you on first and second down as a base 4-3 end, and kick inside on pass rushing downs and see if you can't get more rushers on the field and have him maybe win against a guard? Or are you going to try to force a square peg into a round hole immediately and try to force this guy to be a 3 technique at the next level? And I think he's a little undersized for that as it stands. So we'll see what happens with Rasheem Green, but nonetheless, thought he had a solid day and helped himself here. One of the biggest winners of Group 7 to me, B.J. Hill out of NC State, and their whole entire defensive line was at the combine. And I mean, it just goes to show you just how talented they were on that side of the football, especially up front. You know, the guy that's going to garner all of the attention is obviously Bradley Chubb. But B.J. Hill, I thought, was one of the biggest performers of day number 3 of the combine. And that goes for any group. I'm talking linebackers, edge rushers, defensive linemen, you name it. To me, at 6'3", 311 pounds, for him to run a sub 540 at 4.99 and to run the way, and if you watched him during the positional drills, he was outstanding. I thought his movement skills were unmatched by anybody other than Nathan Shepard and Daron Payne out of this group. I thought B.J. Hill, for his size, and again, Daron Payne and Shepard are both 300-pounders, whereas Taven Bryan is not. So I think those guys are more of a comp for him than Taven Bryan is. But nonetheless, B.J. Hill opened my eyes, and I knew who he was already. I've seen him quite a bit, again, watching Bradley Chubb tape. However, I've got to go back and watch him individually and focus in on just him, and because that was impressive, what I saw from him at the combine in day number 3. I think he helped himself a ton with what he was able to put forth out on the field in Indy. Another one of his teammates, Justin Jones, out of NC State, 6'2", 309 pounds, ran a 5.09 40 again. The 40 times for a lot of these guys, when you're talking big beef up front, is irrelevant. What you care about a lot of times is the 10-second split. Honestly, I just go off the eyeball test. And Justin Jones is another guy that looks like he can be a big-time run-stuffing defensive lineman with some traits that could potentially help get to the quarterback on first and second down. Not necessarily a guy you want on the field in third down, obvious passing situations. But, you know, teams don't always reserve first and second down for the run. A lot of teams choose to throw it on first and second down, and you may be in your base, and a guy like Justin Jones may be on the field. He still may be able to help you in those situations. He looks to have a little bit of athleticism to him as well. And again, at 309 pounds, 5.09 40, not bad for a big man at all. Again, another one of these talented NC State defensive linemen throughout the day, flashing their talent. Justin Jones, another guy that I thought was very solid throughout the day. Reginald McKenzie Jr., obviously the son of Reggie McKenzie, Oakland Raiders general manager. A lot of people thought he should have went back to school, came out a little early, 5'1", 540. At 6'3", 314, he's a guy that has some athletic traits to him. Again, didn't do anything to wow me throughout the course of the day. Thought his movement skills were average at best. But again, another big body that will offer some depth along the defensive line in this particular draft. Derek Nottie, 6'1", 317-pound defensive lineman out of Florida State. He's a guy that I think a lot of people like as a run-stuffing, first, second down type of nose tackle. I think that's going to be his position. He's a little undersized from a height perspective, but at 6'1", 317, he's perfect to be a guy that can win the leverage battle, get up under some guards, tackles, possibly centers, and win some matchups there. But to me, he's a four-down lineman guy. I don't know if I necessarily want him as a nose in the middle of my defense or not. He's a guy that can affect the run game, though, and I think maybe better served to be in a even front 4-3 defensive scheme. But you may be able to get away with him as a nose tackle in a 3-4 defense. It remains to be seen what teams decide to do with Derek Nottie. I thought he was okay. Again, did not blow me away with any one particular trait or skill that I saw at the combine. Belial Nichols out of Delaware, it was really disappointing. He was one of the first guys on the day of many to go down to a hammy, and he blazed the 40 with a 4.95 on his first run, but unfortunately in doing so blew out a tire and was not able to go. And I was looking forward to seeing him, because after you run a 4.95 at 306 pounds, I want to see more. And so I felt like I was robbed not being able to see Belial Nichols. But what that forces me to have to do now is go watch a little bit of Belial Nichols to see what he does on tape and to see if the 4.95 that he ran at the combine matches up with his play speed on the field. Again, he's not running 40 yards on the field very often, but still, is there an explosive, dynamic nature to his game? Does he get off the football quickly? Does he move laterally well? These are all questions I have because of that 4.95, and now I want to go and see for myself. So he achieved one goal, and that was to, hey, show everybody I got some athleticism, and he did that with 1:40 run. Didn't see him on the field, but now if you witness the time, now you probably want to see what this guy has in terms of any juice out on the football field. But disappointed that he came up lame after his first 40 and was not able to produce on the field in the drills. Daron Payne, one of the headliners of the group, really one of the headliners of the defensive line in general in the 2018 NFL Draft, 6'2", 311 out of Alabama. I listened to DJ and Mike Mayock basically echo that this guy is the best of the Alabama defensive linemen. And, you know, there's been a run on Alabama defensive linemen over the last 5 years or so, going, and you could take it as far back as probably 6 years to Marcel Darius. But, of course, you had Ashawn Robinson and Jaron Reed, and you've had a number of guys, whether you're talking about the big defensive tackle Harrison for the Giants, or you're talking about the Redskins first-round pick from last year. His name escapes me at this very moment, but there have been a plethora of defensive linemen for Alabama that have come out, and they say he's the best. And his ability to stop the run and affect the pass is what sets him apart from a lot of those Alabama defensive linemen that have come out of late. And so it was nice to see him run a 4.95, which kind of, one, checks off the box. If you're talking athleticism, that beats all of the other Alabama defensive linemen. The one the Redskins took last year, Ashawn Robinson, Jaron Reed, all of those guys were north of 5 in the 40. And to run a 4.95, that lets me know right off the bat that this guy has that athleticism and that long speed. He's got the twitchiness. We saw that during the NCAA college football playoffs, where he was just a disruptive force, scored a touchdown after picking off a pass. He turns around and catches a touchdown pass for a touchdown. So Daron Payne looks the part. I've seen plenty of Daron Payne over the last 2 years. Jonathan Allen is the name of that Redskins defensive tackle. Shame on me for not being able to remember a player that plays for my favorite team, but nonetheless, Jonathan Allen was a 5'0", 840 guy or something like that last season. So Daron Payne looked good, looked fluid in the drills. He's a guy that easily is the first-round pick. And after Vita Vea, I think is going to be the first, the next guy to come off the board along the defensive line. 6'3", 307, stands Harrison Phillips out of Stanford, a guy that put up 42 reps on the bench, the most of any defensive lineman. He's a big, strong guy. I thought the movement skills were average at best. He didn't wow me in that regard, but to me, he's a guy that is really solid. You know what you're getting, an ex-wrestler. There's a lot to like with Harrison Phillips, and I think what you're going to find with him is he's going to be one of these guys that's going to play in the league for like 10 or 12 years, easy. Just solid. You know what you're going to get. He's going to stop the run. He's going to get occasional pressure on the quarterback, and every now and again, he's going to put up one of those crazy seasons where he gets you 9.5 sacks and is just a menace up front. And I think Harrison Phillips is going to be a damn good football player, and a guy that I think back end of the first, early portion to mid portion of the second, he's going to come off the board, and he's a good football player for sure. Watched a ton of Stanford football. Seems like they're on just about every single week around these parts. So I saw a ton of Harrison Phillips, and he's a good football player. Tim Settle is a guy that I've been hearing a lot of people mention, and obviously a lot of people ended up running into Tim Settle watching Tremaine Edmonds, and it's hard not to run into Tim Settle because he jumps off the screen when you're watching Tremaine Edmonds. You can't help but run into Tim Settle, and I always love big guys that are sporting single-digit numbers, and so Tim Settle is a guy that he hustles on every single snap. He's in the backfield. He's disruptive. I don't necessarily know if he's going to impact the pass game as much, but in the run game, he's a terror, and I like him a lot. And I thought he moved well, actually, in day 3 of the Combine, and I think Tim Settle is continuing to check off some boxes in terms of people watching tape, wanting to see him, and seeing if he matches up with what they saw on tape. And I think he did show a lot of energy. He showed a lot of movement skills. And I think he showed a lot of the things that you saw and have seen on tape from him. And I think he's going to be a guy that, believe it or not, probably comes off the board early in day number 3 of the draft. That's just my personal, humble opinion. Vita Vea, really disappointed with him not being able to do the on-the-field drills. He pulled up lame in his second 40, and so he ran a 5.1 flat, and a lot of people thought that he could potentially be a sub-5 guy at 347 pounds and standing 6'4", but he wasn't able to do that. But even still, at 6'4", 347, to run a 5.1 flat is still amazing in itself. But really disappointed that he wasn't able to go. But again, the tape speaks for itself with Vita Vea. It was just wanting to see it live, but the tape doesn't lie. We know what this guy's about, and he's still going to be the first defensive lineman off the board for sure. A guy that I had no idea who he was going into the Combine, learned a lot about him during the Combine, and can't wait to try to get some in it. It's always tough with these smaller school guys to find tape on them, so I'm going to have to do a lot of digging, and hopefully I'll come up with something. But Nathan Shepard was a name that DJ threw out at the very beginning of the program before they even hit the field. He's like, hey, look out for Nathan Shepard out of Fort Hays State. Obviously, I hear Fort Hays State, and I'm like, where? Who? And so when he showed up, he reminded me a lot of the Auburn offensive lineman that I told you about in day number 1, that I said this guy is just chiseled and looks the part of a guy that you want to get your hands on. He's 6'4", 315 is Nathan Shepard. I don't know if there's an ounce of body fat on that guy. He is absolutely ripped. And for a defensive lineman, that's what you're looking for. You know, again, most of these 300-pounders have sloppy bodies. They're loose everywhere. This guy was well put together. He looked sculpted right out of some kind of comic book. And then the movement skills matched up with his body type. A 5'0", 940, I thought he moved well all day long, and I think he really helped himself. He's one of the guys I checked off, along with Deron Payne and B.J. Hill and Taven Bryan. And you could also throw Rasheem Green in there as a fifth. Nathan Shepard was just exceptional throughout the day, just moving around and showing his abilities. And again, if you weren't familiar with him before the combine, he definitely announced himself to the football world. And I think not only is he going to be a guy that leaving the combine has his name resonating with guys in the football community, but I think a lot of teams are going to go back and do some homework on this guy. And if the tape matches up with what they saw, and from all accounts, listening to DJ and even Mike Mayock talk about him, it sounds like they both agreed that this guy's got something to him. Again, Fort Hays State. Take it with a grain of salt, but he looks the part. I know that much. And he went out and performed as such in group number 7 in day 3 of the combine. Maurice Hurst, we talked about him yesterday with the heart irregularity and not being able to work out. He was at the combine, though, and so we're going to have to wait till his pro day, most likely. He seemed to be in good spirits. Hopefully everything's okay, because he's a guy that is definitely a first-round pick type of player, and I'd hate to see his stock fall because of something that he cannot control. But again, safety first. So hopefully everything checks out with Maurice Hurst as we go to Group 8, the edge rushers, and I'm glad that they separated the two. They still allowed a couple of guys to leak in that should have been with Group 7, but nonetheless, there were some impressive guys here. Now, this group isn't as deep per se with elite talent, but what you do have is a ton of athleticism in this group, and that's always fun to watch. Now, how you employ this athleticism is up to you. Each team individually has to figure out what these guys do best, put them in the best positions to succeed, and allow these guys to go out and make plays. But there's enough athleticism in this group to go around. And before coming into this, I wasn't sure. I knew about some of the big names and a couple of the names underneath in the next tier under, but there's some guys that are a little bit lower down in the draft that still offer you some athleticism and some length that you may be able to utilize if you're a team looking for an athlete trying to figure out where to get guys onto the football field. And so we start with Ade Aronya. This is a guy out of Tulane that I was really impressed with. And at 6'5", 262, and running a 4.6 40, he turned my head because I tried to disregard him. I really did. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure if I didn't even write down the school he came from. I really wanted to ignore him because I try to trim off all the fat when I'm doing this, because you can't talk about every single guy that's at the combine. You just can't, or at least I'm not going to do it. So I try to trim off fat, and I wanted him to be fat so bad. So I didn't even write down the school. I know he went to a green and white school. I'm going to go with Tulane. That might not be the right school. But in any event, I couldn't ignore him. I tried to. And he just kept running fast. He kept looking athletic. And every time I looked at him, I said, God damn, he's long. Arms were just as long as tree vines. Legs are long as well. And at 6'5", 262, he's well put together and running a 4.6. The athleticism is there. There's something to this guy. And I want to watch him on tape. Obviously, I didn't know who he was and didn't want to know who he was. And now I'm too intrigued not to know who he is. So I've got homework to do there. I checked him off as one. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys in this group that stood out to me, and he was one of them on the afternoon. So I was really impressed with Ade Aronya. I thought he did some really good things. Dorrance Armstrong Jr. out of Kansas is an edge rusher at 6'4", 257 pounds that, not going to lie to you, I thought he was going to run faster than 4.87. All right, that was a little disappointing. But that was the only thing that he disappointed on throughout the day. He was outstanding in the field drills. I thought his movement skills was just as good, if not better, than a lot of these other guys up here that we look at as high-profile guys at the edge rushing position. Dorrance Armstrong Jr. looks like the perfect guy to stick his hand in the dirt, set a physical edge in the run game, but not only do that, still get after the quarterback, but also be able to drop into coverage and do it comfortably. A lot of these guys are stiff. They don't flip their hips well. They look like a fish out of water. I thought in the conversion drills where they asked these guys to stand up, drop into coverage, and plant and drive and turn and do all of the things that you have to be able to do at the next level to be successful in coverage. I thought Dorrance Armstrong might have been the best in terms of the field drills in this group. So after the disappointing 40 for me, he was outstanding the remainder of the day. So despite the 40 time, and I'm going to throw that out the window because I think he plays faster than that, he looked damn good. He looked damn good today. He's one of the guys, another guy that I checked off. Obviously, Bradley Chubb, the biggest name of this group and going to be a top 5 pick most likely. 6'4", 269 pounds. Ran a 4.6 540, which is just utterly ridiculous. I mean, the guy was flying, and he looks the part. He's an athlete. He moved well all day long. I don't want to see this guy dropping into coverage. I think teams get too cute sometimes, and they try to reinvent the wheel. He didn't look too comfortable in space, dropping at an angle and all that. Don't do that. This guy is made to rush the quarterback. Turn him loose and watch him produce. Do not ask this man to drop into coverage. I thought he looked good in all of the drills except for dropping into coverage where I thought he was a little stiff and just looked a little uncomfortable in doing so. But other than that, I thought he was outstanding, and he's going to make a hell of a defender at the next level. And he plays with a level of physicality that I like, which I think is going to really suit him well in the run game, and also bullying some of the softer tackles in this league. He's going to have his way with some of those guys as well. Marcus Davenport is a guy that a lot of people didn't know coming into this process. I got an inkling of him at the Senior Bowl, and that's when the traction started to build, and he started to gain traction, I should say, and the momentum started to build for Marcus Davenport out of UTSA. This is a guy here that is extremely raw at 6'6", 264 pounds, but the athleticism is undeniable. Along with Bradley Chubb, Armstrong, and Aruna, this is another guy that I had checked off. 4.58 40. He was flying at 6'6", 264 pounds. He's long. He's athletic. He had one of the better verts. Davenport checked all the boxes off. There's no way he's making it out of the first round. There is no way Marcus Davenport is making it out of the first round. And the bad part is, bad for teams around the league that don't get their hands on this kid, good for the team that actually does, is he's nowhere near his ceiling. This guy, his ceiling is literally the sky. You can't see it, and he's just scratching the surface. He was a basketball player. Football was an afterthought. He just started to focus in on football 2 years ago, and he's only going to get better. The athleticism is dripping and oozing out of every nook and cranny of this guy's body, and I thought he was outstanding on the day, and he's going to be a big-time prospect and a first-round, a surefire first-round pick in the 2018 NFL Draft. 6'4", 297 pounds, another Alabama defensive lineman, Deshaun Hand, ran a sub-5'4". I did not see this coming, running a 4.98 40 at 297 pounds. I didn't see it coming. And that's big for him because I think there's this narrative about Alabama defensive linemen that they can't affect the passer as much. They can help you in the run game, and they're only as good as the parts that are around them because, as you know, Alabama churns out these defenders every single year. Linebackers seem to come out of there every year. Defensive linemen seem to come out of there every year. And then one or two guys in the secondary seem to come out of there every year. And we all perceive them to be good every single year. And so he's got a little bit of juice to him. And I saw that throughout the day. And the 4.98 kind of speaks to that. And so I thought he helped himself. I wasn't impressed to the point where he made the checklist, but he was good. He was good throughout the day. Probably the most impressive guy of this group, though, is the next name. And I was very familiar with him coming into this whole process because I thought he was going to come out last year. So I had done a ton of homework on him last year after he had that monster season and he decided to go back. And then he didn't have as good a season, and I didn't know how that was going to affect his draft stock. But after today's development, coupled with everyone knowing that he was dealing with injuries throughout the 2017 college football season, you'd be hard-pressed to get this guy out of the first round. I think this guy's coming off the board, and it wouldn't shock me that after you get Bradley Chubb off the board and Marcus Davenport, that this isn't the next guy off the board. A lot of people think Arden Key is going to be the next guy. I'm not so sure that next guy isn't going to be Harold Landry. 6'2", 252, 4'6", 40, which is outstanding for that size. And he just looks the part, man. Even in the conversion drills where he had to drop into coverage, damn, he looked good. He was fluid. He actually caught it, which was rare on the day. Harold Landry, I'm telling you what, man. If the Redskins are going to continue to play a 3-4 defense, I'm intrigued, man. The guy can bend. One of my favorite moves for a pass rusher, and not everybody has this ability, is the ability to bend the corner at a 45-degree angle. Not many guys can do it. You may get one guy that can do it every 3 drafts or so. They're just so rare. You don't get guys that can bend at that kind of angle very often. Harold Landry can do it. And he can do it well. And the only question people have with him is how physical is he in the run game? Well, he had about 23 reps of 2 1/4, which everyone's like, I don't know if you play like that, but at least we know it's in there. So I'm intrigued by Harold Landry. I'll say that. And you know who I'm thinking is a great home for him after the trade? You know, obviously it's not official yet, but after the Rams traded away Robert Quinn because he didn't fit Wade Phillips' scheme, and I talked about this on the site, and if you haven't already checked it out, go to LouieTNetwork.net. And I want to hear from you guys. You guys have been slacking. That rundown section, we're supposed to be having a running conversation and dialogue. I'm starting the conversation. You guys are supposed to continue it, and you guys aren't commenting on these transactions and these things that are happening around the league. I need you guys to do your part. And so I talked about that on the site, but Harold Landry is a guy that I'm pegging right now. If he's on the board when the Rams select, and I think they're going to be around 21 to 23, somewhere in there, because they lost in the first round of the playoffs. They're going to be somewhere in that mix. If he's on the board, I've got to think Harold Landry's got to be the pick there. He's too dynamic, and he fits what Wade Phillips is looking for in an edge rusher in a 3-4 defensive scheme. So Harold Landry's not getting out of the first round. And after what he did today, I'm even more so convinced than I was going into it that he's definitely a first-round pick. Jalen Holmes out of Ohio State, 6'5", 283. He's big. He's long. My goodness. He looks like a prototypical 5 technique at the next level. To me, if you're a 3-4 team, this is a guy that you've got to be looking at in the mid-rounds as a guy that would be an absolute steal for you in the 3rd or the 4th round. And I think he's a ready-made, plug-and-play 5 technique right out the gate. And so I like him, and I think he can actually get to the quarterback a little bit too. And so I'm excited about I think his best football is yet to come. And so I'm excited, a little excited about Jalen Holmes. Arden Key didn't run his 40. He said he was dealing with a little bit of a knee I'll take it at face value. And so 6'5", 238. Remember, there was a big discussion about him gaining weight. Well, that weight is off now. He's back down to the explosive weight that we saw him at 2 years ago when he was tearing the SEC apart. There are a lot of circumstances, and we'll do him a solid, and we'll call them extenuating circumstances that may have affected his 2017 season. Injuries may be one of them, but nonetheless, I thought he moved well on the field. He was a little stiff in some of the drills. Again, he's another one of these guys. I don't want to see this guy dropping into coverage, but he's probably going to have to do that at 6'5", 238. I just want to see him rush the quarterback, though. I mean, I didn't think he looked that comfortable out in space. I didn't. You know, there were some times where he looked good and change of direction was good, and he was able to stop and start well, but, you know, he didn't look comfortable running at a, 60, 70-degree angle. You know, he didn't look comfortable getting out into space and then strifing and then trying to come downhill and catch the football. It just didn't look like something that is natural to him, and it's not. And for a lot of these guys, it's not. So I just want to see him rush the quarterback. And I think he's at the proper weight for him to do that and do it adequately. So I thought he moved well. I thought he did everything that he needed to do from an on-the-field standpoint. Again, the 40 is going to be something that teams are going to want to see at his pro day. Obviously, like I said on the podcast, if you haven't already downloaded that, you need to do that. I already said on the pod that really the on-the-field drills at the Indy Combine for him was going to be secondary. The interviews is what's the most important thing for him right now. It's to get teams to believe in the Arden Key product. As a person, one of the things you have to do in life, and I've already said, I'm never selling another product in my life again. The only thing I'm selling the rest of my life is me. And if you are a player in the draft, you've got to sell you. And Arden Key's got to sell these teams on him being a guy that you can trust with a first or second round pick and with millions of dollars. And that this isn't going to overwhelm me, and I'm not going to bail on my teammates. I'm not going to be some kind of disruption. I'm not going to be a guy that's going to be fluctuating in weight. He's got some questions to answer, and hopefully he answered them well at the Combine, but he did not run the 40. Neither did Sam Hubbard, another guy that's pretty high on most people's list in terms of pass rushers in this draft. 6'5", 270, so some great size there. To me, he's a base 4.3 end. He probably could be a 5 tech, but I like his size as a base 4.3 end. I don't think he's anything more, nothing less. Did not run the 40, and he was pretty blunt with his answer as to why he didn't run. Look, I'm not a track guy. I haven't been preparing for the 40 in terms of running. I've been working on all the on-the-field drills, and I'm just not ready yet. So give me a little bit more time, and at my pro day, I'm going to be as ready as I'm going to be, and I'll run it then. So two things. One, I'm probably not going to run the fastest 40, but we already knew that. And two, I'm a 2 bites at the apple type of guy. So why not just come out and run it? And if you're not satisfied with the time, run it again at your pro day. But anyway, it's whatever. He looked good. I actually thought he moved really well, man. Was actually surprised because I wasn't expecting, I'm not going to lie to you, I wasn't expecting a lot out of Sam Hubbard, man. I wasn't. But I got more than I bargained for today. He's actually really intriguing, and I got to go back and watch some more Sam Hubbard tape because he moved a lot better than I gave him credit for going into the day. So thought he was good. Kentavious Street, another NC State product. It's really upsetting because he had the makings of a guy that was going to be really, really fun to watch today. And he came up lame after his 40. And it looked like it was going to be a good 40 time for him as well. And then right in the middle of it, he pulled up. And so really disappointing that he wasn't able to keep going because there was some intrigue there from my side of things. And so he was another guy that just simply wasn't able to to go through the drills because of a hammy issue. Josh Sweat was one of the biggest winners of this group. Obviously, the big names, Chubb, Davenport, Landry, they were all big winners. But Josh Sweat out of Florida State, 6'5", 251. Again, the production may not necessarily meet the athleticism and the length. This guy's extremely long, 4'5", 340. So at 6'5", 251, running a 4'5", come on. I mean, we're talking about an elite athlete here, not to mention a 35.5-inch vert to go along with what arms that look like, literally look like vines. This is a guy that I'm intrigued by. I don't know what his particular skill set is, and that's why the tape is going to have to speak to what this guy is going to have to be at the next level. Just looking at the measurables, looking at the speed, he strikes me as a will linebacker at the next level. But I need to see on tape what this guy's value is. Can he rush the passer? Does he have anything there? Is there any juice available there, or is he just strictly a chase and run and tackle guy? And if he's a run and chase linebacker, that's fine. He looks like he's got the body type and the athleticism to be a will. So I'm anxious to see a little bit more of Josh Sweat after seeing what he was able to do at the combine. Another guy that I had Josh Sweat checked off, as well as the next guy I'm about to talk about. He was another guy that I really just wanted to disregard. I didn't want to talk about this guy. I didn't know him, and I didn't care to know him. And he said, bruh, pay attention to me, man. Why are you trying to ignore me? I'm screaming at you that I'm athletically gifted. I got a little bit of size. I got tremendous movement skills. What else you want from me? I said, nothing, man. You got me. Hands up. You got me. And I'm talking about Marquise Haynes out of Ole Miss. I tried to ignore this dude, man. I tried. But at 6'2", 235, running a 4.67, he was one of the most fluid athletes I saw all day long. And that goes for any group at the combine in day 3. His movement skills were off the charts. He looked naturally dropping into space in the conversion drills. He caught it a little bit. Wasn't great, but he caught it a little bit. He looked like a guy that you could feel comfortable dropping into space. And I heard he also offers you a little bit of juice off the edge as a rusher. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he had 7 or 8 sacks last year at Ole Miss. So here's a guy that I look at and say he can drop into space. He can give you something as a pass rusher. And, yeah, 235 isn't the best weight in the world for a pass rusher, but Arden Key's 238 pounds. If you got juice, you got juice, right? So he's the guy you got to find something for him to do on the field, though. I don't think he's got a necessary position carved out for him. He's a positionless guy right now to me because of his size. But at 6'2", 235, running a 4.67 and having the movement skills that I saw from him today, you got to find somewhere on the field for this guy. And in this day and age where running backs are starting to run amok along with the tight end position is mismatch nightmares, you can't tell me there's not a place on the field for a 6'2", 235-pound guy that can run and move the way that Marquise Haynes did today. So someone's going to draft this kid and try to put him somewhere on the field and have him be productive for them. And at worst, he's going to give you something on specials. So I was impressed with him throughout the day. And then there's Hercules Mataafa out of Washington State. This is a guy that, again, because of what he sacrificed for the team at Washington State, I think it's going to hold him back at the next level initially. 6'2", 254. This guy was playing defensive tackle. I watched him play, and I actually watched a little bit of him last year on tape. And he was everywhere. You know, this guy was at defensive end. He was at defensive tackle. They had him standing up as a linebacker at times. At 6'2", 254, running a 4.76, he's got some athleticism. He was all over the place today. He was falling on the ground. He was losing his balance. He was tripping all over the place. So he's got to find his way. But he's got some athleticism. But he's got to find his way. So we'll see what happens with him. But I thought he had some solid movement skills despite falling all over himself and tripping throughout the course of the day. So that was Group 8, the edge rushers. Then we encountered the linebackers. And this group was marred by injuries. Vita Vea wasn't able to go because of the hammy after the 40s. And this group was really tarnished by guys just coming up lame. It was crazy. It was an epidemic. At one point, you were expecting guys to come up lame after they ran their 40. Let's run down this list because it's pretty long. We start with Jannard Avery out of Memphis. Don't know much about him. I saw a guy at 6 feet, 248. They ran around a 6.46 flat. And so I need to see more. You know, that's a good enough time for me to go and do a little bit of investigative research on him. Jerome Baker out of Ohio State, 6'1", 229, 4'5", 340. We knew he was going to run fast. We knew that. I wanted to see the movement skills. I wanted to see how he looked out in space. He checked all the boxes off. And so he's what today's linebacker looks like. 6'1", 229, basically 230, running a 4'5", 340. He's what today's linebacker looks like. Like I said, he's Reuben Foster. You know, he's Telvin Smith. He's Deion Jones. He's what today's NFL looks like. So I expect someone to fall in love with Jerome Baker and him to come off the board in day 2 of the draft. And I don't think he did anything other than help himself. And I checked him off, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 checks in this group that was pretty extensive of linebackers. So look for Jerome Baker to come off the board in the 2nd round. Lorenzo Carter, man, he came out, blazed us and blessed us with a beautiful 40. I started to get excited, and he was gone. You know, before we even got to get excited, he was gone. Ran a 4.5 flat, and at the time we thought that was a 4.46. Turned out to be a 4.5 flat, but nonetheless at 6'5", 250, 4.5 flat. Are you kidding me? I wanted more, and he's long too. Out of Georgia, he's long. So I wanted more. Nope. Take this hammy and get out my face. So that was disappointing, but nonetheless, I'm intrigued. And Mike Mayock told me, and when you tell me this, it disappoints me because what you're trying to do is you're trying to temper my expectations. And Mike Mayock said, hey, look, man, he's got a chance to be a much better pro than he was a collegiate player. Translation, he didn't meet the potential that was set for him at school. He was a 5-star recruit, probably never, ever hit that 5-star recruit threshold that everyone was looking for from him. So temper your expectations when you turn on the tape to watch number 7. That's basically what they told me. Okay, fine, I get it. But nonetheless, I still want to watch, especially after seeing that today. Oren Burks out of Vandy, 6'3", 233, another intriguing guy with that kind of tweener size. But again, in today's NFL, running a 4.59 at 233 pounds at 6'3", there's a place on the field for this guy, and I thought he moved well. He's another guy that was on the checklist in this group. He moved well all day long. And again, I went into this process not knowing a damn thing about Oren Burks. I'm intrigued, and I want to learn a lot more about Oren Burks because he looked good, fluid out in space, and ran well all day long. Obviously, Tremaine Edmonds out of Virginia Tech, 6'4", 253 pounds. He's a stud, and he's not making it out of the top 10. And I think he solidified that today. At 19 years old, think about that for a second. What were you doing at 19? Probably not running around at the NFL scouting combine, not benching 2 1/4, 20 times. You know, probably not doing that. God, that's impressive. And they say he's just so mature beyond his years. I can believe it. Don't know him, never met him, but I can believe it. Damn. He's good. He's going to be good. And he's not making it past San Francisco at 9, I don't think. But if he does, by some grace of God, make it past them, there's no way he gets past the Raiders at 10. And I can guarantee he doesn't make it past the Raiders, who are dying. They're thirsty for a linebacker inside. Whichever one's left, him or Roquan, they're taking him. I don't see either one of those guys, if one's gone, the other's gone by 10 at Oakland. I just don't see how the Raiders aren't pouncing all over a linebacker. They failed to address the position last year. I don't think they're going to make the same mistake this year. And sure, they could probably use a corner or two, but I think they're going to look around at the depth of the cornerback position and say, we'll get one of those guys later. We need a linebacker and an impact one at that. And I think they're going to go and pounce on one of these guys. And Edmonds looks the part, man. He does. Shaquem Griffin was the story of the weekend. Obviously, we saw him bench yesterday in day 2 of the combine, putting up 20 reps of 2 1/4, which was just amazing in itself, with him putting the prosthetic on and then going out and doing what few guys were able to do, not just at his position, but at some of the other positions where you expect them to be able to. It was just phenomenal to watch. Then to have him come out and do what he did at the 40, just remarkable. 4.38. I mean, I literally was slightly dozing off when he stepped up to the line and blessed us with that 4.38. And I went from to, oh shit. I'm looking around like, and I'm not watching the combine with anybody, and I'm looking around like, did y'all see that? Yeah, I'm weird like that. I looked around as if I was watching it with 3 other people, like, did y'all see that? I was up. Heart was beating fast. I said, wow. If you didn't know if he was draftable before this, because I know it's crazy to even talk about if this guy's draftable or not. After watching what he did on the bench, I've been watching him for the last 2 years because of his brother, obviously. But just to see the production on the field, to see what he did on the bench, and then to turn around and watch what I mean, he's checked all of the boxes. What more do you want from this guy? He flies around the football field. He's a tackling machine. How can you deny this guy? And how can you deny him of a second-round selection at this point? And then he had 2 cramps, 1 in each leg, and still refused to sit down and gutted it out. And you could tell he was hampered. He was definitely diminished because of those cramps, but he still gutted it out. How are you not rooting for this guy? How can you not love what this guy's done this weekend? And hell, his entire life, because it's got to be challenging to grow up with one limb being disabled. So it's just outstanding. I checked it. Obviously, he was on the checklist. Jeff Holland was a guy that I was really kind of disappointed in. And I knew he wasn't going to test all that well, but I still thought he would move a little bit better than what I saw today. And at 6'1", 249, he was already at a disadvantage because he's undersized. He's got short arms, short limbs. So he was already at a disadvantage. And then for him to come out, and I just thought he looked sluggish. He didn't move all that well for me. I think he's just a guy that plays the game better than he tests. So I'm not giving up on Jeff Holland. I think that there's probably some value with him, but I don't think he did anything to necessarily help his draft stock today, in my opinion. 6'2", 236 is Texas linebacker Malik Jefferson. 4'5", 240. I knew he was going to run fast. I didn't know he was going to run that fast, but I knew he was going to time well. And again, another one of these guys that looks the part of today's NFL linebacker. He isn't as physical in the run game, but I think he is as good as you will find in this draft as a coverage linebacker. I'll take him over just about anybody in this draft from a coverage standpoint. So there is a niche that just stepping into the league, he's going to already have carved out for himself. So I believe in Malik Jefferson and what he brings to the table. And I also have him on my checklist today as a guy that just moved well, did everything that I expected him to do, and even exceeded a little bit of my expectations. And again, I can see this guy coming off the board. He's coming off the board in day 2 for sure. I mean, linebackers are coming at a premium now because of what the running back position is morphing back into, and because of what tight ends are in this day and age now. Linebackers are a necessity. Athletic ones are a necessity, and Malik Jefferson, there's a premium on those guys, and you got to get them while you can. I think Malik Jefferson is a guy that wouldn't shock me if he snuck into the first round, but I think he's going to ultimately end up being a day 2 guy when it's all said and done. Leon Jacobs was a guy that I tried to ignore. I didn't want any part of it. He's Wisconsin linebacker. He's black, and he went to Wisconsin. I don't want any of this guy. And then he ran, and I said, God damn it, Leon. Leave me alone. He said, no. You're going to write my name down, and you're going to talk about me because I deserve it. All right. You got me. 6'1", 246, 448. God damn it, Leon. You got me. So now I got to watch tape of Leon Jacobs because I had no clue who he was, and I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know. And Leon said, you got to know. And he actually looked good in all of the drills. I thought he had some solid movement skills. And so I'm intrigued by Leon Jacobs now. So now I have extra work to do. So he's a guy that, again, if you weren't familiar with him coming into the process, a guy blazes a 4.48, you got no choice but to do homework. And just because you're fast, it doesn't always equate to being good. You saw the list. I don't know if you guys were paying attention, but they had Shaquem Griffin on the list of the fastest timed linebackers at the Combine. He's at the top of that list. He's the fastest linebacker in Combine history since they started keeping those stats. But you look at that list, it was a list of who's who of nobodies that didn't amount to anything. There are about 2 guys on that list that actually had meaningful snaps in the NFL. Thomas Howard was the most notable guy on that list. Ex-Oakland Raider. Go figure. Okay? May he rest in peace. Al Davis. Loved his height, weight, speed specimens. And Thomas Howard was exactly that as a will linebacker in this league. But nonetheless, that list was not an impressive one. So just because you're fast doesn't mean anything. But 4.48, hard to ignore that. And so Leon Jacobs at 246 pounds, pretty damn impressive. Josie Jewell out of Iowa is a guy that a lot of people like, a lot of people respect. 6'1", 234 pounds. Didn't run as well as I would have liked him to run. As a matter of fact, he strikes me as one of those, he's not as big as Tyler Medikevich, but he strikes me as one of those guys that, you know, high production at college. You really like these guys. They've got all the intangibles. And then you're like, but you're lacking the athleticism that's necessary to be on the field on a consistent basis. I don't know if that's exactly Josie Jewell or not. We're going to find out over the next coming months. He's definitely going to give you special teams value at worst, but I think there's somewhere in the league for him. If Will Compton and guys like him can exist as backup linebackers in this league, why can't Josie Jewell be a guy that at least is on someone's roster as a backup inside linebacker? So we'll see. But I wasn't impressed with him from a speed standpoint. I thought his movement skills actually were pretty good throughout the course of the day. However, Peter Columbia out of Stanford was a guy that I wanted to ignore as well. I tried to ignore him, but at 6'3", 252 pounds, running a 4.57, Columbia was a guy that I couldn't ignore. So, and I'm pretty sure I just jacked his name up a couple times. I had it earlier, should have wrote down the pronunciation, but nonetheless, he's fast and his movement skills were pretty good throughout the day. So that's another guy that I've got to pay attention to moving forward in this process. Darius Leonard was a guy that I was looking forward to seeing. Mike Mayock, I listened to his conference call going into the Combine, and he was one of the names that Mike Mayock brought up, and DJ kind of echoed that as we got to the program as a guy at the top of the show that, hey, we need to look out for Darius Leonard as a guy that can run as a side-to-side, sideline-to-sideline speed guy at the linebacker position out of South Carolina State. And at 6'2", 234, he fits in what today's NFL linebacker looks like. So I was anxious to see what he was going to do in the 40 to kind of confirm what I was told, because obviously I didn't know who this guy was. Couldn't pick him out of a lineup. But he came up lame on the first 40, and he looked like he was well on his way to about a 4.5 40. And he still ran a 4.7 despite pulling up lame, and he stopped halfway through the 40 and still ran a 4.7. So I think he was well on his way to a 4.5 and some change, and really disappointed that I didn't get to see him because I didn't know him, and this was going to be my introduction to him, and I was robbed of that today. So that was a little disappointing. Uchenna Owusu out of USC is a guy that Mike Mayock also talked about as a guy that was probably going to have to stand up at the next level, had his hand in the dirt more so at USC as a rusher. And so 6'2", 251, he flashed some athleticism throughout the day. 40 time was in the 4.8s, so it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. I think he might have even dipped into the 4.7s. Nonetheless, I thought his movement skills were really solid for a guy his size. And I'm looking forward to seeing what teams decide to do with him, because he's got a body type that looks the part of a defensive end, but he's going to have to be a linebacker at 6'2", 251. Same thing with Jeff Holland. I mean, at 6'1", 249, basically 250. What this guy, I think, is built to be a defensive end, but at 6'1", 250, can he be James Harrison? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Double O out of Oklahoma, 6'2", 253, a guy a lot of people like. I don't like Double O. I'm not a Double O fan. And so Okonkwo, for me, isn't a guy that I'm in love with. And he showed athleticism today. He did that. I don't think that translates to the field, though. And I got to watch him some more. I'm down on him because when I watched Oklahoma and when I watched him play, a lot of his sacks to me were hustle sacks. They weren't, oh, he just smoked that guy off the line of scrimmage. Oh, he just bull rushed this dude and jacked him up, put him on skates. A lot of his sacks were just relentless. I'm going to beat you by just being a worker bee type of sacks. And those guys don't move the needle for me, because in this league, yeah, those guys get you sacks. But those guys are Brian Orakpo. Those are empty sacks. Those are the guys that'll get you 8.5, 9.5 sacks. You look up at the end of the year, and they got 11 sacks. You're like, man, damn, he beasted. But any fan of that team will tell you, man, don't pay attention to that shit. He ain't getting to the quarterback for real. On 3rd and 7 in the 4th quarter with 2:43 left, when we need a stop, his ass ain't getting to the quarterback. They'll tell you. And Double O, for me, looks like a guy that'll end up with 8.5 sacks, be a solid contributor to your team, but when you need him most, he ain't getting to the quarterback. That's how I feel. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. Won't be the last time I'm going to be wrong. Definitely won't be the first. So I got to do more homework on him, but just my first blush, off of first impression, I'm not blown away by Double O. Thought he did some solid things at the combine, but not my cup of tea. Roquan Smith, I was really looking for it. And I know what Roquan Smith is. I've watched enough Roquan Smith to know what he's capable of. I still wanted to see it anyway. And he did run. He did get to bless us with a 4.51 before he was unceremoniously taken away from us during his second 40. Nonetheless, at 6'1", 236, again, I can't state this enough. He's what today's NFL linebacker looks like. And so he's coming off the board in the top 10 picks, I think. If he somehow sneaks out of the top 10, he doesn't make it to 15. I can assure you of that. Leighton Vander Esch is a guy that, I'm going to tell you, Leighton Vander Esch he's climbing up draft boards, man. And at 6'4", 256, this guy here got some length, some size, got some quicks and some athleticism to him. It wouldn't shock me if he snuck in the back end of the first round. No, I'm not going to lie to you. I told you, linebackers are the new premium position. After corner and pass rusher, the next big position, you used to find, man, we used to treat inside linebackers and linebackers in general, but we used to treat inside linebackers especially, treat them like running backs. Man, we'll find one of those in the mid-rounds. Man, we'll get one of them in the 5th round. We'll get an undrafted dude to come in and ball for us. Can't do that no more, man. You can't. Not with these running backs acting up. Not with Alvin Kamara's on the field now, man. You can't do that no more. Not with Todd Gurley acting up. Not with these dudes coming out of the backfield and blazing you. Not with the Joe Mixons of the world coming up and the Christian McCaffreys coming up into the game. You can't do that no more. You got to have linebackers that can run and cover. And Leighton Vander Esch, I'm telling you right now, dude is rising, man. He's another checklist guy for me today, man. He was outstanding. And I don't know if he makes it out of the 1st round. I'm really serious about that. I don't know if he makes it out of the 1st round. With the way that today's NFL is shaping up, I don't know if he makes it out of the 1st round. Joey I out of Western Kentucky. Another guy that I tried my damnedest to ignore this dude. Stop talking to me, man. I don't rock with you like that. And he was like, bruh, just give me a chance. And he was another dude that blazed the 40. And I couldn't, at 4'6", I couldn't ignore him. At 6'1", 229, I tried and I couldn't. And so he's another guy that ran well, looked good in the conversions, or looked good in dropping and some of his movement skills. And so, again, another one of these guys that there's a place in the league for him, man. You know, there's a place in the league for him, for sure. 6'3", 236, BYU linebacker Fred Warner. I thought he would run faster. Not going to lie to you. I came into this process expecting Fred Warner to run a little bit faster than he did. I was actually disappointed in his 40 time. His movement skills throughout the day weren't bad, but it took me a long time to get over the 40 time because I thought he would run faster. He looked like he plays faster, and maybe I just need to tell myself that maybe he just doesn't test well. Maybe my eyes don't lie. The tape doesn't lie. He runs faster when you watch him on film. But then again, maybe that's just him out there in the Mountain West, and maybe when you out in the Mountain West, you look a little faster than what you really are. Maybe there are not enough elite athletes on the offensive side of football. I mean, how many elite athletes do we get out of the Mountain West Conference? So you got to keep that kind of stuff in mind. But in any event, Kamiko Toure out of Rutgers, I got to give him some props because he was another guy that went down to a hammy injury. My man taped it up and got back out there for a couple drills, and then he realized I probably should sit my ass down. But I got to give him credit for at least trying to gut it out. But nobody, again, I've said this enough times, we're not trying to see anybody get injured to the point where they can't perform at their pro day. And it probably wasn't in his best interest to come back to begin with. But just the fact that he showed the toughness to try to get back out there, I commend him for that. And you get a salute from me, young man. But he's another guy that I tried to ignore. But he can run. He was another one of those dudes that midway through his 40 that looked like it had 4-5 written all over it. High 4.5s, low 4.6s. He pulls up lane. And so at 6'5", 253, there's some juice to this dude. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. Dorian O'Daniel out of Clemson, 6'1", 223. He's got the body of a safety. That's because he was an ex-safety. He moved well throughout the day. And again, if he's physical enough, and the tape won't lie, if he's physical enough, there's definitely a place on the field for him, even if only in nickel sub packages and as a dime linebacker. Even if that's the case, there could be a place on the field for Dorian O'Daniel. But again, the tape will have to confirm some of those things for me in order to really say if he's got a spot and a niche he can carve out for himself at the next level. Rashaan Evans is another big major name in this draft at the linebacker position. He chose not to run his 40, going to wait until the Alabama Pro Day, which is literally like Wednesday. So it's literally right around the corner. 6'2", 232. I checked him off, though. Despite not running a 40, his movement skills were off the charts. He moved well out in space, caught the football exceptionally well. I don't know what he's going to run, but from all indications, everyone seems to assume he's going to run well. If that were the case, why didn't you just run today? But okay. I want to see how fast he runs before I start banging the table about him being a first-round linebacker like everybody else. You know, I'm one to buck the trend. You know, I was the one that said C.J. Mosley. I don't see it. I was wrong, but nonetheless, you know, I'm not one to just go with everybody else because that's the easy and cool thing to do. I can be a contrarian at times, and so I like what I saw from a movement standpoint. But if he's running a 4.75, give a damn about the movement skills. If it's coming at a 4.75 in a 4.75 package, you can keep that in the first round. So I checked him off though because the movement skills looked great. Now I just need the 40 time to speak to that, and we're all good. So that was day 3, and I'm gonna give y'all like 19. I'm gonna give y'all 20 minutes basically to chop it up with y'all and get to some of these comments and answer some of the feedback or questions that y'all may have or comments. And let's get into these comments and see what we got. All right. Andrew Kim says, damn, LBs and edge guys were impressive. Yeah, they were, man. I must admit, I walked away really impressed with what I saw from a lot of these dudes. I didn't expect the kind of athleticism and speed we got from these linebackers, and to see it throughout the day, the way that it was displayed, very impressed. Carter, Griffin, Roquan, Jefferson, Landry, Chubb, Hubbard, Edmonds, Vander Esch, all running faster than most of the receivers. Facts. Remember, I told you how disappointed I was in the receiver group yesterday, and you're spot on, AK. Those guys were impressive with their speed, and a lot of those guys aren't just speed. They got movement skills and skills in general to match the speed that we saw on display today. Captain Spartan 04 says, how did Leighton Vander Esch and Rashad Evans do? Pretty much talked about both of those guys. Leighton Vander Esch, I think he's a first-round pick. I think he's going to sneak into the back end of the first. Rashad Evans, he looks the part. I just need the 40 now. I just need confirmation. Give me the thumbs up, because the last thing I want is a guy with great movement skills, but when Alvin Kamara decides to run that Texas route and stick his foot in the ground and run that arrow route, and he gets beat ever so slightly, he can't rebound because he's running a 4.75. That's what I don't want. So I just need to check the box. I just need him to check the box for me at the pro day because he didn't run. Rodney Ray says, I need the Redskins to either draft Vita Vea, Deron Payne, or Derwin James. Luxury, he said luxury pick, kind of, or Roquan Smith. I don't think Roquan's going to be there at, where are the Redskins, 13? I don't think he's going to be there. Derwin James might be there, and we're going to see him tomorrow, and he might blow this combine up, and he may not be there. We'll see. Deron Payne, I wouldn't be mad at that. I just wouldn't. I mean, I think he can affect the passer, so I wouldn't be mad at that at all. You know, tag him up with Jonathan Allen. I still think that our other defensive lineman has a little bit of juice as well. So that could be the makings of a hell of a defensive line. So I wouldn't be opposed to that. And Vita Vea, I need to watch more. I think I know what this guy is and what he brings to the table and what he could be. And if the Haloti Nada comparisons are legit, then sign me up. But I got to do a little bit more homework on him, man. I do. Because I think I might be I might be sleeping on this dude a little bit. Everybody is just continuously barraging me with Vita Vea, and I'm just like, I'm Dikembe Mutombo and everybody. Block, not in my house. No, not today. And I think I just need to watch some more so I can either stand pat on my beliefs or be like, nah, y'all right, and kind of confirm and kind of conform to what everybody else is saying. I probably just need to get on board, but I need to watch some more. Captain Spartan also says, I feel like it's a guarantee the Raiders will take Reggie's son. I think they also take Deshaun Hand as they like to take former 5-star defensive lineman Eddie Vanderdoes, Jimmy Ward, and Mario Edwards. You're right on that. But how many of those dudes can you possibly take before you say, all right, enough's enough? Because I think they like Mario Edwards. Remember, he had the serious neck injury, so he's still coming back from that. I never liked Jimmy Ward. I told him Jimmy Ward, not Jimmy Ward. I never liked Ward out of Illinois. Never liked him. There's that. He's an ex-basketball dude. He's not a football player. I never liked Ward. Eddie Vanderdoes it was a guy that I think they got sold on at the Senior Bowl last year. Because if you watched his career at UCLA, he didn't really produce at UCLA and had a ton of injuries. But he was a different dude at the Senior Bowl. And he opened up a lot of eyes. And we'll see. The jury's still out on Eddie Vanderdoes, though. So, anyway. Captain Spartan says, Deshaun Hand was ranked higher than Myles Garrett coming out of high school. It'd be like that sometimes. But I can tell you this much. Hand looked a lot more athletic than I gave him credit for today. So, that was impressive. I was impressed with him. I can see why. He's not the athlete and the player that Myles Garrett evolved into, but Hand has some talent for sure. And that's why he ended up at Alabama. Rodney Ray says, okay, you're talking to somebody else. Hey, look, man. Y'all don't be killing me because I was late. I'm normally late. I'm going to get my life together. Don't worry about that. I'm going to get my life together, man. These have been some long days, okay? You got to forgive me. I'm putting in work days here, man. 9 to 4 every day. I'm putting in work days, man. See, I got to forgive me, man. Hey, tell him, Rodney, man. Tell him. KT the Southern Gent says, who do you think helped increase their draft stock? Well, every guy that I checked off on my checklist, I think improved their draft stock. Whether it's Taven Bryan or Nathan Shepard out of Fort Hays State as a defensive lineman. You got guys like Harold Landry, who people may have been on the fence about. I think he really helped himself today. Josh Sweat and Marquise Haynes are guys as edge rushers who might be, stand-up linebackers, off-the-ball linebackers. You got to take a look at these dudes, man. They're too athletic to ignore. Obviously, Jerome Baker is a guy that I thought helped himself today. Shaquem Griffin helped himself all weekend. How can you disagree with that? Malik Jefferson is another guy that I think. And Leighton Vander Esch. All of these guys helped themselves today. One of the biggest winners of today, B.J. Hill out of NC State. So a lot of guys helped themselves, draft stock-wise, today. Or at worst, they forced evaluators and teams to go back and put on the tape to see if what they saw at the combine matches up with the production and what they were able to put forth on the field at their respective schools. Gregory Lightbody says, okay, you talking to somebody else. KT the Southern Gent says, top 5 edge prospects. I have Davenport, Hubbard, Key, Carter, and Tyquan Lewis after the first day. So these are guys that you don't think are going in the first day, and you think they'll be around. And those are I don't know if that's the order. I'm going to tell you right now, Marcus Davenport doesn't make it out of the first round. So you might want to revise that list. Arden Key might be around. We'll see. Wouldn't shock me if he wasn't, because, again, much like um, much like offensive line, tackle in particular, it's a premium position in this league. Quarterback, edge rusher, cornerback, premium positions, they go quick. And pass rusher is a premium position. And I don't think this is a particularly elite draft class. So if you get an elite talent at the top, like Arden Key, could potentially be, you're probably going to see him go off the board a little bit sooner rather than later. Captain Spartan 04 says, tomorrow, can you watch Deshaun Elliott and Armani Watts? I'm not familiar with Deshaun Elliott, so I'll be looking out. I know Armani Watts plays for Texas A&M. I've seen Armani Watts for quite some time now. I've always liked Armani Watts, so I'll definitely keep an eye on him and tell you how he did tomorrow for sure. KT the Southern Gent says, what are your thoughts on Kentavious Street and Duke? I didn't see Duke. Kentavious Street, I'm intrigued by him. And for that matter, everybody on that NC State defensive line are NFL players that I think have a chance to play at a high level. Of that group, all four of them were here. Of that group, in this order, is how I rank them. Obviously, the number one guy on that list is going to be Bradley Chubb. To me, it's then Kentavious Street and then B.J. Hill. But after watching Hill today, I may have to reevaluate that. But for me, Kentavious Street is the second best. Then you've got Hill, and then for me, Justin Jones. So that's a hell of a group there, though. In any event, see. Hey, Greg, man, you got to stop killing me. Hey, Gregory, you got to stop killing me, man. Oh, man. What up, Greg Brewer? Buffalo pregame says, Bills may go for linebacker in the second or the third. Who do you think would best fit McDermott's 4-3 scheme? He likes speed. That's why they drafted the linebacker out of Jesus. Who was that linebacker? I liked him a lot too. I want to say he was out of Boise last year. He could run. And no, he was out of Boston College. Matt Milano is his name. And to me, that's the type of linebacker that Sean McDermott, because you remember he's coming from Carolina, where he had Thomas Davis and Luke Kuechly at his disposal. He's looking for and trying to recreate that. You can't find another, like Luke Kuechly's don't grow on trees. Thomas Davis's don't grow on trees. But he's looking for that kind of speed. And so just out of looking at this group of linebackers, there are some guys that fit that mold. A guy like Jerome Baker, to me, could be, but this is the thing. McDermott, although he's looking for speed, he's also looking for tough guys. And Jerome Baker, at times, doesn't strike me as a tough guy. He's a finesse linebacker. And I don't think that necessarily fits what McDermott is looking for. So, just looking at this list, I mean, he would love to get his hands on a Roquan Smith or a Tremaine Edmonds, but you don't draft high enough for those guys. So if you're looking later on, a guy like Rashaan Evans, I think, could be a great fit in Buffalo. If you're looking second, third round, Rashaan Evans may be around. Again, his 40 time is going to go a long way in determining where he's drafted, but he could be around. We'll see. But I want to see this Leon Jacobs guy. After running a 4.48 at 6'1", 246, he's big, he's fast. I got to see more about what he is and what he brings to the table. But it'll be interesting to see. I got to watch more tape on these linebackers. I mean, I walked away with so much information now on these guys, and now I've got a reference point. I know what direction I need to be pointed in, and so I'll be able to answer that. By the time we get to In the Draft Room live and we're talking linebackers, I'll be able to answer that for you. Buffalo pregame. Buffalo pregame also asks, Bills could definitely go defensive tackle in the first round. Who do you think could be available at 22 overall? Taven Bryan is gaining steam. And it's funny because he's a guy that has a lot of ability. Harrison Phillips is a guy that Mike Mayock compared to Kyle Williams. And we know Kyle Williams is on his last legs in Buffalo. So maybe Harrison Phillips is the perfect replacement for him at 22. Maurice Hurst, we didn't get to see him today. If I'm Buffalo, I don't know if I want to draft another guy with any kind of ailments. The Bills drafted the Alabama linebacker a couple of years ago. And remember, he had some kind of situation where he got pushed down the draft boards. He was supposed to be a first-round pick, was Reggie Ragland. Had a heart situation, got pushed down, and ended up being a second-round pick that the Buffalo Bills were able to snag. I believe he was a second-round pick. And never really flourished in Buffalo, ended up getting traded to Kansas City. I don't know if you want to do that again, but Maurice Hurst will probably be there for you at 22. A guy out of Michigan that a lot of people like. I've got more homework to do on him. Daron Payne, I don't think is going to be there for you at 22. He'd be a great get at 22 for the Bills. But to me, the only guys that right now I look at and warrant a first-round pick, potentially Taven Bryan. I've got more homework to do on him. Daron Payne. Harrison Phillips is a guy I'm starting to come around to. I got to do a little bit more homework on him. Obviously, Vita Vea and Maurice Hurst are the only guys. And of that group, the guys that I think might be available at 22, Hurst, Taven Bryan will definitely be on the board by then. And you may be able to get Daron Payne. It just depends on how many quarterbacks go. Obviously, quarterbacks are the key because if we get 4 quarterbacks that go before 22, that's going to push down some other talented players that could allow you. And then we're getting a guard and Nelson. We never get guards that go this early for the most part. So you could have a guy like Daron Payne fall to you in the first round at 22. It's not inconceivable. But the Redskins didn't think Jonathan Allen was going to fall to them at 17 last year. You know, there were some circumstances surrounding his fall, you know, but nonetheless, the Redskins never envisioned Jonathan Allen falling to them at 17. So Daron Payne could be a guy that could fall. But I don't see it happen. But again, we'll see. Andrew Kim says, watch Teray my freshman year at Rutgers. When he's on the field, he can bend. I think he's a day 2 pick if medicals are clean. And I think Mike Mayock kind of spoke to how good he was as a freshman. Early in his career, I think he said he was a all-American freshman. But then after that, he kind of ran into some injuries and some different things that saw his play kind of diminish. Again, I got to do my homework on the guy. I don't know him enough to speak on what he brings to the table. I just know he's athletic and long, and those are 2 things I like. So we'll see. Brian Emerson says Shaquem Griffin has heart, man. Keeps proving doubters wrong. Definitely has that in spades for sure, man. His story is remarkable, and how can you not root for the guy? Atlas says, if you were the Bucks at 7, did anyone grab your interest today? The Bucks, to me, are in the business of a defensive tackle or edge rusher. You know, whichever one is the highest on your board at the time, that's what you need to take. Excuse me. And so, if you love Deron Payne, if you love Vita Vea, if you love Chubb, look, first of all, if Chubb is on the board at 7, we're not having this discussion. Just turn the card in, right? But if he's not, and he's already gone, if you love Marcus Davenport, I wouldn't be opposed to that at 7. I wouldn't be. But to me, if you're the Bucks, these are the guys that you consider at 7 from day 3 of the combine. You consider Marcus Davenport, Bradley Chubb. You consider Vita Vea, Deron Payne, and you consider Tremaine Edmonds out of Virginia Tech. Those are the guys you consider because Tremaine Edmonds, I think, in third down situations, you could actually slide him down as a rusher and ask him to go after the quarterback. I think he's got that ability not only to play the linebacker position, but also double as a guy that can offer you some juice off the edge as a rusher. So I think there's extreme value with that guy. So I wouldn't be opposed to pulling the trigger on him at 7 either. So those are the guys in day 3, if you're the Bucks at 7, that I think you should be paying attention to. John Niner says, Josh Sweat can stay healthy, a guy the Niners should draft in day 2. I don't know if he's a day 2 guy or not. I know the measurables, height, weight, speed speaks to a guy that is intriguing. I got to watch more before I could give you a recommendation or, kind of beat the table for a guy. I got to watch more. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm well-versed in Josh Sweat and what he brings to the table. I just know he's 6'5", 251 and ran a 4.5, 340 and had a 39.5-inch vertical and moved well all day long. So we'll see. Hey, I appreciate that. Not your father's root queer. Hey, I appreciate that, man. John Niner says, Edmonds, man, wow, 250 running 4.5. Niners got to draft this man at the 9th spot. I don't see how he gets past you guys at 9. If he's on the board at 9, I don't see how he gets past you guys at 9. And then I think as a reactionary default, the Raiders have to then take Roquan Smith. Because I think they really want Edmonds. But I'm not trading up to get in front of you to take him and having to give up a 2nd-round pick and a 4th-round pick to do it. I'm good. I'll just wait on Roquan if that's the case. Andrew Kim says, if the Ravens needed a D tackle, they would definitely take Deron Payne, LOL. Ozzy loves Bama boys, man. And so I know, like you said, that's where he would go. He loves shopping at the Bama store. Every year, if he can get his hands on a Bama defender, he'll take them. He says, Ozzy was probably writing down sleepers like he does and gets steals late in the draft or undrafted like Pierce. Yeah. You guys always seem to find a way to find a Brandon Williams or, a Pierce like you just mentioned. So, I don't know. It's crazy. All right. So, 20 minutes are up. I'm gonna leave on this one right here. Rodney Ray says, maybe Zoe Carter for the Bills in a second. Maybe. I look at him, and he intrigues me. And when I look at Lorenzo Carter, he's long, he's athletic. I got to watch more tape because there were three Georgia defensive players: Bellamy, Carter, and Roquan Smith, obviously, that stood out, that are draftable players. John Atkins is going to get drafted as well on the defensive line, but those linebackers were outstanding. And so Lorenzo Carter is a guy that I think may have underachieved at Georgia. So I want to see if I see what I need to see, even if if it doesn't show up in numbers. If I watch the tape and I walk away saying, okay, I can see why this guy might be a better pro than he was a college player, then yeah, that's a guy that I would probably bang the table for the Bills to probably take in the second round as a linebacker. Because the height, the length, the weight, the speed, phenomenal. But again, I need to see why he didn't play up to the 5-star level that he was had placed on him coming into college football. So, in any event, it's going to do it for your man Louie T and day 3 of the Combine. We've got one more day to go. Thank you guys for joining me on the program. And remember, we changing the game over here. Period. And need you guys to subscribe if you haven't already done so. I need you guys to check out the site, LouieTNetwork.net. I need you guys to be more involved. Leave comments on the site so we can chop it up. All right. Make sure you download the podcast, Louie T Network Podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and on the site. And if you're a Redskins fan, I've got a forum up there, so check out the Redskins forum. Love to talk to you guys about our skins. And obviously, we're going to do a nice, long forum on Tuesday on the Redskins Report live. But we're down 3 days in the Combine. 1 day to go. D-backs tomorrow to wrap up the Combine. Safeties and corners. Should be a fascinating day. I'm intrigued because there are a ton of guys that I'm looking forward to that I need to know, how fast are you? All right. I need to know, how fast is Josh Jackson? How fast is the corner out of Colorado? I just got to know. So there are a number of guys that I'm looking forward to, and I talked about that on the podcast, about guys that I wanted to see how fast they ran. Those two were at the top of my list. So I'm intrigued by tomorrow's developments, and so I'll see you then. Until next time, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. See you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.